at last week, or maybe kind of cover a couple of the verses that we sort of looked at last week also. But we're going to kind of follow up with what we looked at last week, in the sense last week we looked at the crisis in pastoral ministry in the church. That was the topic. And I don't mean Crossview. I hope that's not the case. But the fact that the pastoral ministry in the world, in the nation today, I believe is really in a crisis condition. And so today we're going to look at one of the reasons for that is, and it is the fact that we won't address it. That it's not something that we want to broach. It's the elephant in the room. It is that thing that everybody maybe is aware of. Everyone knows it's there, but refuses to acknowledge its existence or talk about it. And so since we don't talk about it, nothing gets done, and it just makes things worse. And so we're going to look at today, as we look again now at really not so much at what Phineas and Hophni do, but we're going to look at their dad's response. And their dad's response is sort of that elephant in the room response. It's like he knows what's going on, but he really isn't willing to do anything about it. And so I'm gonna say another thing tonight that's maybe a little bit provocative, a little challenging, and it is, I believe that's true in the church. That we know what's going on a lot of times in the case of the crisis in pastoral leadership, but we're not willing to do anything about it. It's the elephant in the room. So tonight we're going to look at that. We're going to look at maybe why that's the case, and what do we need to do in response to that as we look at these 5 verses 22 through verse 26. Here's what it says. Now Eli was very old, and he kept hearing all that his sons were doing to all Israel, and how they lay with the women who were serving at the entrance to the tent of meeting. Now, I don't want to get into being accused of ageism, especially since I think I fall into that elder category now. But let's just for a moment pause and think about the fact, why do you think it's necessary that God point out in this situation his age? That what is, and maybe we're speculating here, but what is the relevance of his age to the things that are going on? Betty?
Because they're thinking he's soon going to be passing away and they're going to step up.
Right. I think that's probably the main focus of it, is that we're getting to a point now where he's no longer going to be carrying on the duties. And so maybe for him, it's this understanding now, this kind of reality that these two people who God views as worthless are the ones in line to the responsibilities of spiritually leading us. Maybe that's certainly part. Any other thoughts that you guys had?
I was just thinking, Eli, with age comes experience and knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
He knows all this, but he's letting it go.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think that's part of it too. That helps us, maybe gives us some understanding of this isn't just something that just jumped up recently. This has been going on for some time. And maybe the fact that his age is mentioned has something to do with that. Teresa?
I think he's tired. I think he's weary.
Yeah.
I think he's like, this is not worth the battle.
Yeah. So we talked a few weeks ago in the book of Hebrews about weariness, about growing weary. And here indicating end of his life, he's been trying to do his duty here in serving the Lord in this place, and this is what I got to show for it. You know, this is what I got to hand over to hand this over to. So probably all those things in some way are important, or the fact that his age is mentioned is probably helps us to have some understanding about that. So he's very old, and he kept hearing. Now, it didn't say he heard. It said he kept hearing. What's the significance of that? Yeah, this has been going on. This is something that's been happening. He's aware of it. Okay? So, it says this then. And he said to them, why do you do such things? For I hear of your evil dealings from all these people. And so he confronts them. Apparently, for all we know, he's been ignoring it, but he does confront them. So maybe if we can put this all together, he's weary, he's old, he's thinking about the transition, and that's bothering him. And so maybe finally he's to this point where, okay, we probably should talk about this. I really need to talk to them about this. I've ignored this long enough. So he approaches them and he confronts them on this. Now, do you have any problem with the way he confronts them, or the way he words his confrontation? Do you think he's overly harsh with his sons? No, he certainly isn't. Why are you doing these things? You know, Jesus flipped tables. You know, Eli's like, why are you doing this? Why am I hearing about this from everybody? I mean, this seems like a kind of a significant thing that's been happening. And there doesn't seem to be a real, just a real harsh reaction to what has been happening. And I think maybe giving us some insight into this too. He says, no, my sons, it is no good report that I hear the people of the Lord spreading abroad. So here comes the next thing, and it is that this is being talked about. This is not hidden information. This isn't something that's being kept from anybody. Everybody knows it. Everyone is voicing their concerns, their displeasure, gossiping, whatever it is. Everyone's talking about this. There's lots of people indicating a couple of things. Probably this has been going on for a good while, and nobody is doing anything about it. And it says, if someone sins against man, God will mediate for him. But if someone sins against the Lord, who can intercede for him? And so this is what he says to the sons. Look, if your sin is against somebody else, you have God to intercede for you. But if your sin is against God, then there is no one to intercede for you. Now, when you hear that, what are your thoughts? What is your initial thoughts to the fact that when I sin against man, God can intercede for me. But when I sin against God, no one can intercede for me. True? Okay, Shirley. Back then, he's speaking from a BC. He's speaking from a before Christ perspective, and this would be the perspective. So today you would say what? Yeah, Jesus is the mediator. Yeah, that I can be forgiven for my sins against God because God himself has interceded for me. And that would be in the person of Jesus. But this would be the thinking of before Christ. And so warning them that this sin is a particularly dangerous sin that you're involved in. But they would not listen to the voice of their father, for it was the will of the Lord to put them to death. Now this is where it maybe gets uncomfortable for us in our grace-based thinking. So the wording there seems to indicate that even if they would have wanted to do what was right, they couldn't do what was right because God had put it in their heart and mind to do that was wrong. Right?
No, they had plenty of opportunities to hear God's voice and turn back to God, and they were refusing for years, apparently.
Okay, so Kathy says, no, that was not true what I just said. She said they had plenty of opportunities to repent, to turn from their wicked ways, and they didn't do that. And so we can't say that they didn't have a chance, they didn't have a choice. But at this point in history, they don't, right? At this point. So what would we say, what has happened to them? They have a hardened heart. It's the whole thing of Hebrews all over again. Listen while you can. Repent while you can, because there's going to come a time when you can't repent. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to die, even though that might be the case. It means that we get to a point when we reject and we reject and we reject, that finally we get to a place where our heart has been so hardened we don't have the ability to to respond, to repent. And that's certainly where Phineas and Hophni are. And now this, as this happens over and over again here in chapter 2, then it says this: now the boy Samuel continued to grow both in stature and in favor with the Lord and also with man. Now, doesn't that seem just a little bit, I don't know, out of context? Doesn't it seem like really doesn't fit with the story there? I mean, isn't this something completely different? That we're talking about Phineas and Hophni and the mess that they created, and Eli trying to get them to turn, and then all of a sudden, Samuel.
Oh, Levi, yeah.